Welcome to part 4, in which we're going to use layer masks to selectively adjust different parts of an image. We've got two images for you, part before 01 and part before 02, and you can see that the exposure here is set for the foreground, and in this image we've set the exposure to capture the sky detail, so we can combine the two shots together to create an even exposure with detail in the sky and in the foreground. Let's kick off by selecting this layer here by going to Select All, then choosing Edit Copy, and then we can pop to part 04 before 01 and choose Edit Paste to add the copied layer onto a new layer like so. So what we need to do is to remove this top section, the white section, to reveal the correctly exposed sky from the layer below. And there's several different ways to do that. We'll grab the magic wand, set it to a tolerance of about 39, and then click to select the sky. We can then modify that selection just to make sure we lose every little bit of white clinging to the edge of the yellow field by going to Select, Modify, Expand. If you type in about 3 pixels, it will just move the marching ants a little bit more into the selection to make sure that we've got every little bit of sky. Now what you could do is you could simply go to Edit Cut if you're using older versions of Photoshop Elements like 8 or 7, and that will cut the sky and remove it to reveal the sky on the layer below. Alternatively, I'm going to undo this, and if you've got Photoshop Elements 9, here's an alternative technique. Go to Select Inverse, then click on the Add Mask icon down here, and that will create a layer mask which temporarily hides the top section but reveals the correctly exposed wheat. So you're now combining the two layers like so. I can turn that off by shift clicking on it, and there you can see there's the original layer with a mask. The black areas are hiding the overexposed sky to reveal the correctly exposed sky from the background layer. Now, layer masks are non-destructive. You can paint black and white onto them to change the way they show or hide detail on the attached layer. For example, if we grab a black brush here, there's the brush tool, there's a black foreground color, a nice soft edge brush, you can actually click and spray on the mask to then hide the bits that we're spraying on. So we're now revealing some of the darker wheat from the layer below, and that just gives us a nice definition to the horizon there. But I'm going to Control Z to undo that because I actually prefer the stronger and brighter wheat. I'm going to apply the mask now by right clicking, click Apply. We can now duplicate that by dragging it onto the Create New Layer icon, and then with the Move tool we can drag the copy down like so, and we could even press Ctrl T to get the Free Transform tool and stretch it and make it a little bit taller, drag within it to drag it down again, and that extends the wheat a little bit more down towards the foreground, and that means we don't have so much dark areas at the bottom of the frame. Click the tick to apply the change, and then there's our new layer. It's been transformed slightly. I can grab the eraser, a nice soft edge brush, just click and spray over the edge so we lose that sort of hard definition where the layers are overlapping, and that helps blend them together more effectively. Our field is looking fairly correctly exposed, but the sky is still slightly flat in the contrast, and we're losing some of the details in these delicate clouds. So to increase the contrast of the sky, I'm going to create an adjustment layer. So if I click here, I can choose Levels, and up pops the Levels adjustment layer, and you can see there that it's sitting at the top of the layer stack. We can now adjust the levels. We can lighten the midtones by dragging this to the left, or darken them, and that helps increase midtone contrast and bring out more detail there in the sky. If we take that to around about 0.52, we've got much more dramatic and darker textures in the sky turning up there now, and we're seeing these beams of light, but we've still got our highlights preserved, so that's a nice way of adjusting the sky to create a more dramatic looking image. So while the sky is looking much better, it's darkening the foreground details far too much. So what we need to do is to use the mask to stop the adjustment layer from changing the bottom sections of the image. And to do that, we can grab the brush tool, choose a nice soft edge black brush, and make sure it's black. And then if you just click on the mask and spray into the foreground, you can restore the original tones of the wheat or the crop, like so. Once you've painted on the mask, turn this on and off for a second, and you'll see that the black areas on the mask aren't changing at all, but the rest of the image is changing. So that's a cool way of stopping the adjustment layer from making a change to a particular part of the image. We can change the opacity to around about 50% or so, click on the mask and spray, and that allows the adjustment layer to make a little bit of a change, but not quite as dramatic as it was in the top section of the image. So let me just summarize what the adjustment layer is doing. The white sections on the mask are actually allowing the adjustment layer to make a total change to the pixels on the layer below. But the grey section on the mask is allowing a bit of an adjustment to happen, but not as strong as it is in the white parts of the image. And all the black sections on the mask are protecting the lower details from being changed at all by the adjustment layer, and that's a great way of selectively adjusting pixels in a picture. You can enhance most photographs by boosting the color saturation of the shots, but in this case the color in the crop is very strong and the background sky is looking very desaturated, so we need to make another selective color adjustment. To do that, we'll create an adjustment layer, go down to hue saturation, and what you could do is you could boost the saturation of the shot as a whole. You can see we've got very vivid yellows here. Now they're much too strong compared to the sky, so what we could do then is grab the brush tool, set it to 100% and just spray over the foreground to stop these areas from being oversaturated. Alternatively, you could have gone down to the drop down menu here and just targeted the blues and pushed up the saturation of the blues as well, just to create more vivid looking blues without changing the colour of the foreground flowers. Okay, so now the sky is looking much better. We turn that off, there's the before, turn it on again, and there's the more saturated version. Let's add a little bit more texture and detail to these corners by creating a vignette using a new image layer. If you click here, that will create your new layer. Then go to Edit, Fill the Layer, and choose White from this pop-up menu here. Click OK, and there's your white layer. We can then grab the elliptical marquee tool, set feather to something really soft like about 77 pixels, and if you alt-click in the middle, you can draw out from that central point and create your vignetted corners. We then need to fill these with black, and to do that we need to inverse the selection. Select Inverse, then go to Edit Fill, and then choose Fill Selection and choose Black. Click OK, and there's our soft vignetted corners. Control D to deselect. We can then use a blending mode to hide the white by going down to Multiply, and then reduce the opacity for a much more subtle, darker corner. So around about something really small, like about 16%, we'll just gently darken the colours there and create a fairly authentic vignette. Let me turn that on and off. It's subtle, but it adds a cool extra layer to your project. And finally, let's tweak the tones of the image as a whole by adding yet another adjustment layer. You can have as many as you like. So click here and create a new levels adjustment layer. You can see we've got a nice spread of shadows, midtones and highlights, but the brightest pixels in the shot peter out about here, so we can brighten them up even more by dragging the white input level slider to the left a little bit, just underneath the graph, and that just gives us brighter highlights and a wider range of contrast. Let me turn that on and off. You can see it's a subtle change, but it helps the image stand out even more. So that's how masks and adjustment layers can help you selectively adjust different parts of an image to adjust colours or tones depending on what you need to do. In the next movie, in part 5, we're going to create a panorama. We're going to stitch several images together to create a wider scene, and that also involves masks as well, but it's done automatically for you using Photo Merge Panorama, and I'll show you that in action in part 5. See you then.